We're speaking with Spike Cohen, former vice presidential libertarian candidate in 2020. Let's talk a little bit about Twitter. The First Amendment is a huge topic of debate, and there have been these files that have been dropped repeatedly. It's not getting a lot of discussion. Do you think there should be more discussion about what is coming out of the information that Elon Musk is revealing about Twitter?
Well, it's been very interesting to see who is or is not covering it. In the I guess, alternative news, this is being covered extensively. The Twitter file drops, both for people that support it and people who are against it, has been covered extensively. Largely within the mainstream corporate media, this has gotten little, if any, coverage at all. And it's easy to see why. They're showing that there has been a direct collusion between big tech, corporate media, and government agencies to decide what it is that we, the plebeians, are allowed to see or say on their social networks. And it's an incredibly important thing. I love the way that they're doing it. You know, one of the biggest mistakes that Edward Snowden and WikiLeaks and others like them have made was they would just dump all the information out there so that people could see the unvarnished truth all at once. But the problem is, A, the media didn't pick up on it, and B, that's not how people process information. You got to give it to them one snip at a time so that they can process what you've given them and then hit them with it again. You got to give your opponents time to, you know, make up their excuse for this drop and then hit them with the next drop so that they have to scramble again. It's just how news has to be presented, and I'm glad it's being done in this sort of drip Chinese water torture way of presenting it. I'm very much looking forward to, you know, Twitter file number 185, where they, you know, get into whatever scandal we're going for that week.
So obviously Twitter is a private company, but this also still is sort of a free speech issue. But my question is, should the court weigh in on whether or not Twitter is part of the public square and that free speech works the same way on Twitter as it does if you're standing in the middle of the street waving a sign saying something? Is that the future for Twitter and for social networks?
I understand that argument from a philosophical perspective of, you know, is this considered a public square? Is talking on Twitter the same as, you know, saying something out on the sidewalk? And should private actors be held to the same standard as government actors when it comes to, you know, what can or cannot be said on such large platforms? And I understand the arguments for that, but from a consequentialist standpoint, do you want the government deciding what can and can't be said on social media?
Absolutely not.
So much of what we're seeing right now is where the government was putting pressure on social media to allow or not allow things, especially things related to COVID, to January 6th, and to other things like that. I recognize that allowing private actors to have these massive, you know, for lack of a better word, public squares and have control over them can come with its own problems. I would trust that or be okay with that as opposed to the trade-offs that would come with the government, you know, quote unquote, guaranteeing our safety and freedoms, especially as we're watching these Twitter files show time and time again, where it was either the government leading it or colluding with them to do it in the first place. You look at the Hunter Biden laptop thing, it was the FBI directing that. So no, I don't think the government should be involved in that.
So what are your thoughts on dealing with the so-called misinformation that may come out? Obviously, many of it is just a matter of opinion, but you can acknowledge that there are people that may leverage these platforms to put out things that are just blatantly false or misleading, and people may buy into it. It may be motivated to do things. Do you have any thoughts on how to address that?
Yes, the best way to address bad information is with better information. I am not nearly conceited or vain enough to think that I, in my, you know, final form wisdom that I have here, know all things that are true or not. And the only way that I can discover more things and discover what is or is not true and know for certain the things that I believe to be true are true is if I am faced with information that disagrees with what I have to say, that presents a whole new worldview. It might even offend me. It might upset me. It might drive me to anger. But if I am telling people that they're not allowed to say those things, I am creating my own echo chamber, and ultimately whoever is deciding what is or is not misinformation and therefore deplatforming or removing people, they are essentially saying we know what is best for you in all things and only our opinion is sound and allowed to be broadcast. Even if those people didn't end up becoming corrupted with that kind of power, which is inevitable, they still don't know. They personally don't know everything, and it would be foolish of anyone to try to pretend that they did know. So the best way to deal with bad information is with better information, and it's how we discover information is bad. How do we know it's misinformation if we don't hear it? We don't have an opportunity to dissect it, don't have an opportunity to compare it to other information. We don't have the opportunity to scrutinize it and critique it. I don't want someone to tell me something's misinformation. I want to be presented with information and be able to determine for myself using other information whether or not it's true.